Good afternoon. It is nice to see you. I wasn't expecting all these people. I thought maybe like 5 people would show up. So my self-esteem has increased, but my inner like, oh my gosh, what if they don't like what I say, is rising up in me. So I am calming the butterflies. So this is why I'm walking around a little bit, so that we'll do this. So I am so glad to be with you all here. This isn't my first trip to Gordon. Maybe it won't be my last trip, hint, hint, because there are some really cool vegan restaurants not too far away from here, and you all have kept me too busy to go out and try them. But the vegan food in the cafeteria has been excellent. I wish Calvin would have had something like that. I've been trying. But anyway, okay, so here we go back. Diet diversity is a thing. Okay, so here we come back. So the one and the many, right? I love this topic, that idea, our oneness and our manyness. I thought I'd have some fun with the title and say the struggle is real. Because a lot of times in working with schools and working with organizations, people's hearts are in the right places. They want to do this. They want to celebrate diversity. They want to welcome in diversity. They want to be known as a welcoming or an inclusive place, maybe even a reconciling place they'd like to be known. But just because you want to doesn't mean it's going to happen, or that doesn't happen without a struggle. So what I'm going to spend most of my time with, I think, is talking about how we derail diversity efforts, and what that looks like from my perspective, and what we can do about it. So first thing is you have to actually decide what it is you want to do. I mean, it's when I was working at Calvin, I retired last year, yes, 38 and a half years, and I insist on that half year because I earned it. When my hair is not colored, yes, I have the gray hair to show it, so yes. But you have to decide what it is you really want, because we use this language so interchangeably, and what's going on in this country, in the political scene, and the church scene, and everything else, you kind of wonder, is diversity a good thing or is it a bad thing? Because there's a whole lot of stuff that's going out there. So you have to decide, what is it that you really want? So when people would call me at Calvin and say, hey, we see what you're doing at Calvin. Could you help us in our diversity efforts? And I said, well, let's talk about what it is you actually want, right? So we can talk about diversity in terms of what we call, I say we, because my friend Michelle and I, which drove our publisher crazy, because we spelled Michelle the same way as well, right? Michelle and Michelle, what do we call you? It's like, oh, call us the Wonder Twins. It works. So compositional diversity. That's diversity outcome level 1, right? If you're going to do this work, you say you want to do this work, what are you trying to accomplish? Level 1 is compositional diversity. It's where it's really this defining definition. This is definition of diversity. It's just manyness, right? We can look around the room and we can say there is diversity in the room. There's diversity in gender. There's diversity in race, nationality, in age, in majors, in regions of the country or regions of the world that you're from. Height, weight, hair color, your favorite movies. Godzilla, right? That's mine. If you read the book, you'll find out. Okay, here we go. So that's compositional diversity. And a lot of times when people would call and ask, how can we improve our diversity efforts, they're asking about compositional diversity. And frankly, I'm not interested in talking about compositional diversity because that's an easy fix. They usually don't like my answer. I just say give people more money. Because I promise you, if you tell me that you would pay me $1 million a year, I will be your chief diversity officer, right? I'll come out of retirement. I want the money up front and in the bank, right? I say that lightheartedly, but kind of, sort of, maybe not. If it really is $1 million, I will help you with your problems. But here we go. But you can woo people to you. You find what will attract them. You can bring people in. If you really want to bring people in. But the question is, do you just want the faces Or do you want all of who they represent when they come? Right? There are a lot of multiracial churches, some multiracial schools, but not a lot of multicultural. Because what it feels like is the dominant, normative, white culture. Right? There's a difference. So, level 2 is inclusion. So if you're going to do the hard work, and it might sound strange coming from a diversity professional, but if you're going to do the hard work to bring people in, and you're not going to leverage the diversity that's there, don't bother bringing people in. Don't bring me in. Don't say you want my voice, my experience, my culture, whether it's for race, for gender, for age, and then you never ask me anything. You don't ask me for input. You don't listen to me when I speak up. You don't even invite me to the table. You don't include me in decision making. You're not even considering me when you're making policy decisions. Then don't invite me. Don't say that you want inclusion because you really don't. What you just want is a brown face. I'll say that in my case, you just want a brown face so that it makes it pretty. Okay, for the students who are here, the BIPOC and international students, have any of you ever woken up to discover your pictures on a website or on a poster or something, and you wonder how in the world you got there? They should be paying you for that. Okay, here we go. So that happened. I can't tell you how many times that has happened to me. Side story that's really pretty funny. My son went to Calvin. He hated the dining hall. It's not as nice as your dining hall, but he hated the dining hall, right? I mean, he maybe would go there for a bite of cereal or something. His picture was taken of him in the dining hall, eating cereal, because that's what he went there for. Do you know, I kid you not, for 8 years after he left, his picture was still on the website for the dining hall? Anyway, okay, so here we go. Inclusion, right? Outcome level 3 is equity, right? Outcome level 3 is equity. Because you can bring people in, you can say, hey, help us in this process of understanding policies and decisions and like that. But equity means that we're taking an inclusive step further by incorporating justice and righteousness, right? Because inclusion could mean, I hear what you're saying, I really value what you're saying, but everything stays the same. When things begin to change, when there is some parity that's developing, that's when we're getting to the level of equity. When people who have been marginalized or been outside of the system are saying something is wrong because they have been invited to the table, and now they're saying what is not working well, what's working against that feeling of shalom that you say that you want here, and then action is taken, that's when we're getting closer to equity. But Michelle and I came up with one more level of outcome, and this is what we call outcome level 4. This is the hardest one to get to because we are defining reconciliation as compositional diversity, plus inclusion, plus equity, plus faith. Of all the diversity outcomes, as I said, this one is the hardest one to achieve. I'm in a church setting, probably not surprising, and one of the things I appreciate, and one of the reasons why I attend the church that I attend, is because we don't talk a whole lot. Our language is not just about being a multicultural church or a multi-generational church. Our greater emphasis is on about being a reconciled community, a reconciled church. We want to change things so that everyone has a sense of belonging, that everyone cares for one another's situation, that we don't just speak up about things because it's happening to me. We speak up things because it's happening to our brothers and sisters in Christ who are with us. So that's the hardest one because you have to talk about justice. And you can't talk about justice without making some people upset. Because some people believe that if we don't talk about racism, if we don't talk about sexism, if we don't talk about ageism, then there won't be a problem. I can't tell you how many times as a person who was leading climate studies, racial climate studies on my campus, there was always a handful of people who would write, in the comment sections. For a couple of years, I stopped putting open spaces for people to say stuff. Because every time, if you would stop talking about racism, there wouldn't be a problem. I was like, you know what? If me not talking about racism would solve racism, I would have my mouth wired shut, just to make sure I wouldn't accidentally say something about it. But can you imagine if we said the same thing about poverty? If you just stopped talking about poverty and poor people, we wouldn't have a problem. Or maybe about sex trafficking. If we just stop talking about sex trafficking, you're making us feel uncomfortable and unsafe. It's still here, right? So that part is hard because we don't like the hard part. Since we're so close to Easter, I can use this analogy. We like to talk about the day after the resurrection. We don't like to talk about the cross, and we certainly don't like to talk about the Saturday when, we just saw that crucifixion. Our hope is lost. What do we do now? And it's not clear what the next direction is. We don't like the Saturday. We like to talk about Sunday and the day after. And so we say, let's get together and let's talk about how we can be better. Let's talk about how we can celebrate. We cannot talk about how we're going to celebrate our oneness and our manyness unless we're also willing to talk about what has kept us separated and what is breaking and hurting some members of the body. If we don't talk about what is broken, what's hurting, we're never going to get to that place where there is actual shalom, right? So the struggle is real. I know that's me with the purple, right? The struggle is real. Struggle is real because in this season, in this time, there's a heightened awareness and there's this sense of urgency. We need to do something. Add in social media, and now even more so, right? You turn on the news and you're depending on which news you watch, you turn on the news, right? And you're seeing this in your face. Yeah, we got to do something about the border. We got to do something about urban areas. We got to do something about rural areas. There are gender rights. There's all of these things, right? So there's this heightened awareness. Whether it's a heightened awareness that we need to keep moving forward or there's a heightened awareness that this stuff is scary, we need to take a step back. One way or another, there's a sense of heightened awareness and an urgency. There is something at stake. Second, there is increased resistance and individualism. Woo! Pick a year. But for me, it would be 2016 was the year that white nationalism has always been under the surface. Always been under the surface, right? It's not gone away. But 2016, it became, hey, you know what? We can say what we want to say, and maybe there's not going to be too much resistance to that. And so now, feeling emboldened, and now this conflation of a political or a social agenda, white nationalism, with Christianity, and I say Christianity with air quotes, the increased resistance. There are some Christian schools who have gotten rid of their diversity programs. There are Christian organizations, we're not talking about the secular ones, Christian organizations who have gotten rid of their diversity initiatives. If you remember 2020, that summer, how everybody was up with placards, Black Lives Matter. Well, a lot of people were up with placards, Black Lives Matter. We need justice. We need it now. And people would say, aren't you excited, Michelle? It's finally happening. Justice is finally going to happen. I said, check with me in 3 months and see how much energy and excitement is still going on. And just as I feared, I believe me, I was praying I was going to be wrong. But experience has told me that, yeah, it's only going to last 3 minutes, 3 months, until the next crisis or the next thing happens. And then all that rush to hire chief diversity officers, suddenly everybody was losing their role and losing resources. Right? So increased resistance and individualization. The struggle is real. Mental and emotional well-being challenges. This is hard work, people. I love talking with young people who are excited and energetic, say, yes, I want to do this. And a part of me wants to say, yeah, I hope you have a therapist. I hope you have a therapist, or you have a tribe, or you have a safe place where you can be, because there will be people who will challenge, if you're a believer, who will challenge your Christian faith. There will be people that no matter what you do will tell you you're doing the wrong thing. There will be people who will accuse you of being on the side of the devil for just even talking about justice, talking about reconciliation, for even saying that the kingdom of God welcomes diversity, all kinds of diversity. You'll have people who, well, anyway, well, that's another story. But the mental and emotional well-being, the gaslighting, the microaggressions, and this isn't just, if we're talking about race, this isn't just people of color. This is for white allies too, white co-conspirators too. In fact, they probably get a lot of it and don't get the sympathy or the empathy that I would get. Because people say, oh, it must be hard being a black man here. Yeah, it is, but it's also hard being a white man focusing on justice. It is. So, mental, emotional well-being, checking out. People who are in professional diversity roles often don't last more than 5 years because it is just too hard. So how did I do it 38 years? That's a whole nother time. Invite me back. Here we go. And then institutional critique and accountability, especially young voices, especially people who are saying, wait a minute, something is going on. It's not just an individual thing. This is systemic. They're saying, wait, institution, you said this. This is what you said. Remember back in the summer of 2020 when you came out with that diversity statement? Remember in the mission statement when you say this is what we're about? Remember in the staff handbook, in the student handbook? Remember all that publication that you had? We want to see that. And more people are saying we're not going to take no for an answer. So all of this makes the struggle to get to whatever level of diversity outcome a struggle and challenging, right? Heightened awareness and urgency, increased resistance and individualization. Oh my goodness, I'm talking way too much. Here we go. So why do diversity efforts fail? Well, I'm going to go through real fast. If you want a deeper dive, get the book. Here we go. So 1, there is low or no level of institutional support from senior leadership. You can't find a statement from them. You can't find them saying anything really positive. There's just low or just more low level, doesn't really feel real from senior leadership. It's not that you can't do the work if senior leadership is not behind it. Somehow, I suspect that you all know this. It's not that you can't do the work. It's just more of a struggle to get it done. An inability to translate the vision for diversity throughout the whole organization. Everyone from the board, the senior leadership, faculty, staff, students, the physical plant, maintenance, vendors, donors. Everyone should be able to articulate what the vision of diversity is for this place. Even if you're not in 100% understanding how it's going to happen, you should be able to articulate why it matters here. Not why it matters at Calvin, not why it matters at Harvard, but why it matters here. A lack of understanding of how institutional culture operates and change. Okay, we have policies, we have guidebooks about how things change, but then for real, there's other ways that things change. You need to know, who do you need to talk to? Who needs to be in the room? It might not be the person who has a title, but it could be a person who has a whole lot of influence. You need to get that person on your team to get something to change. So lack of understanding of how it changed. And one of the things I would get so frustrated with my students, because they thought if they just wrote did a petition and signed it and brought me 300 signatures, that I could change something. It's like, I wish it were that easy. I'd be happy to do it, but that's not how things work. This is how it works. These are the people that you need to talk to. These are the people that how you present your requests. Okay, going on. Like I said, read the book. Insufficient financial, human, technical, and symbolic resources. You all can say amen to that one, right? So it's not, it would be wonderful if all I had to do was smile and, things would happen and change, but I need money. We need to build in the capacity in order to get things changed. Symbolic resources, this is one where maybe it's not just about the money, right? Because human, financial, technical. An example of a symbolic resource, when I became the executive associate to the president for diversity and inclusion, I had been at Calvin so long and had been the former dean. My office had a beautiful bay view window. And it was a nice big office because, I had rose up the ranks and I had earned it. Then the president came in and I ended up on the president's cabinet. He says, I would like for you, he did say I would like for you to move closer to my office. Well, closer to his office meant that I would now go to a windowless office half the size that I had. But it would be right across from his office. He wanted me there because he wanted to show that I was a part of the president's office, and this was important because I was in that hallway. I was like, he said, is it a deal breaker? And it's like, part of the flesh of me wanted to say yes. And then the other side said, no, it's not a deal breaker. I said, but I do need to use your office whenever I get a little tired of not having any windows, because his had big windows. And he actually said yes, so don't be afraid to ask for what you want. Here we go. So cognitive strain and cognitive ease, right? How easy, what kind of load are we carrying to try to make sense out of this? A lack of a comprehensive framework. There's a symbolic statement, I don't know, maybe something called a shalom statement, but there's no action plan behind it. I don't know. There might be an action plan. I know you have a shalom statement, but anyway, I'll stay out your business. Okay, here. A failure to measure both inputs and outcomes. You got to measure the inputs and the outcomes. Sometimes organizations are afraid to measure the outcomes because they're afraid the results are going to be bad. We don't want to do a climate study because then we're going to find out for real, that some people are unhappy. Well, guess what? They're already unhappy. Have them do the climate study. But sometimes the unhappiness is not to the degree that you think it is. And perhaps it's not even concerning the area that you think it is. But if you don't know what's going on, if you're saying we're going to improve morale, if you don't know what the morale is like, how do you know if you made improvement? If you're saying you're going to increase diversity among your faculty and your students, but you're not measuring the amount of diversity that you have, how do you know you've made improvement? You got to measure both the inputs and the outcome. Failure to establish accountability for outcomes at multiple levels. When diversity is everybody's job, nobody is held accountable. So there needs to be accountability. And then fear of change. Woo! But if we do become more diverse, who's Gordon going to be? Woo! Hold on to what has always been because it's always worked. And sometimes this isn't so much for the students, and sometimes it's not so much even for the administrators. Sometimes it's the board. Sometimes it's the donors. Sometimes it's the friends of Gordon, the friends of Calvin. Because the people who went to Gordon 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 50 years ago, have an image of Gordon of what it is not now. Ta-da! And then a lack of urgency. Or we're going to wait till there's a critical mass or there's another crisis. And then when there's a crisis, there's another something like a George Floyd, we get all excited, we write something, and then it dies down because it always dies down. Then you have to figure out, so how do we derail our good intentions? Any and all of these things. And usually it's more than just one of these things. And you'll see, these are not bad things. These are not people who are in the room saying, okay, how can we make sure this doesn't happen? There's a lot of competing priorities that are going on, right? So this is the question to ask yourself. What is your level of resolve and resilience to lead and require meaningful, sustainable, long-term organizational change? If you say you want to change, move from outcome 1 to outcome 2, or outcome 2 to outcome 3, or 3 to 4, what's your level of resolve? Because the struggle is real. So if the struggle is real, when that struggle pops up, when those things pop up, when that call comes, that email comes, are you going to be able to say, no, this is important. This is biblical. This is our calling. This is who we are meant to be. Or are you going to cave in and say, you know what, let's just keep the conflict little. We don't want to rock the boat. We want to keep everybody happy. There's no way you can do this work, and everybody is going to be happy all the time. It's just not going to happen. So here we go. How do we get there? Again, this part is all in the book. A shared commitment, a sustained commitment, and shifting culture. I'll just point out this real quick, and then I will shift for a Q&A, maybe. But here we go. In thinking about diversity, your efforts, right? The work that you're going to do, things that you need to consider. I'm going to stand here. The pressures that are going on, sometimes there's inward pressure. There are the employees, the students, the staff, they're saying something needs to change. You say this is to be a welcoming place, but I don't feel welcome. So there's that inward pressure that something needs to change. We need more ethnic studies. We need more gender studies. We need more specialty type of topics. That's an inward pressure, something needs to change. Outward pressure could be the government, could be culture coming in and saying, no, you have to do this. You are non-compliant with these federal regulations, or the church is saying, you need to do this. That's an outward pressure to change. You also have to remember what your context is. You know what? You all are in New England. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. I'll put it like that, right? So there's a challenge in that, right? If you were in Southern California, you wouldn't have to worry about compositional diversity. But you're not in Southern California. You are in this place with a particular history and a particular climate. So here we go, right? So context matters. And then mission. What is the mission of the institute? What is the mission of the organization? That should have an impact on what it is that you're going to do. And then the shift model just says if you want to shift culture, if you want to bring about change, first of all, you have to be able to see what's going on. See accurately, objectively what is going on, and not just through your own eyes, but the eyes of others as well. You need to heighten awareness of what you're seeing, what's broken, what's working, heighten the awareness. You need to identify, and then this is what we're going to do in response to that, right? Because you can't, if you see 30 things that are broken, you can't work on 30 things at once. You pick your top 5 things. This is what we're going to address this year. This is what we're going to address the next year, and you strategize how you're going to do that. So you identify it, you facilitate. You don't just create a strategic plan and say we're going to do it. You actually do the work. That facilitation leads to transformation, and then again, once you enter that transformation process, you start seeing other things, and you go through the cycle again. But what you see and what you facilitate need to match up. If what you're seeing is that students are unhappy with the diversity of curriculum offerings, but what you're facilitating are more small group conversations, you have not fixed the problem. So however you define the problem or the situation, your solution needs to align with that. And then finally, getting back on track Yeah, getting back on track. One of the things you can do is take a readiness assessment. Again, get the book. Take the readiness assessment, refresh your why, really understand why are you doing this? Because it's a lot of work. It's costly. Not necessarily financially, but it is costly to do this. This will come out of your skin trying to do this. So refresh your why so that when stuff comes up, you'll say, no, this is where I'm standing. Renew your commitment, own it, make it your responsibility. It is not just Nathaniel Perez's responsibility to make it all work. Own it, make it a part of your response. Increase your own intercultural competency. Ask, don't assume. Listen for understanding. Start where you are. Don't try to start from where another organization is 10 years out, but start where you are. And then do something. Don't end up being paralyzed because there's so much to choose from, and so you don't decide to do anything. Do something. Pick something. Get a dart. Throw it on the board. Pick something. Open a page. You can do that. And then finally, okay, we're done. The Antioch podcast, that is my crew. Conversations of Biblical Anti-Racism, and then the Diversity Playbook. Our diversity playbook, I'll just say real quickly, is in 3 sections. The first section is for diversity professionals, or people who are leading efforts in this work, even if you're not identified as a professional. It's just Michelle and I saying, hey, these are some of the things that we've learned along the way. This could help you. Section 2 is for the people who want to walk alongside the diversity professional, how to be an ally or a co-conspirator, and how to know you're not really helping at all, and because that's a thing. And then the third section is for the institution, and that third section is how do you create a shared commitment, how do you create a sustainable commitment, and how do you begin shifting culture. And so that's what I have for you, and I will leave it to, as I'm giving it back to you. All right.